going? It's going. Does it sound okay? Check. Yes.
Do you want to talk for a little bit?
Here.
Oh,
Okay.
just
These are consent forms.
okay.
So, we'll have you fill out both, and then we keep one and you keep one. And this is
What does it consent to?
here. It's all written up. It's just to like use and share any photos or audio recordings. So here's yeah, you can take some time to read over that. And here's the other one in the pen.
When we talked about this, I just thought you guys would be sort of roaming through the neighborhood, taking pictures, talking to residents.
It's planned out.
Oh, yeah. Wait till I see Fred. Okay, I'm trying to... Oh, there it is. Okay. Is it okay if I get up? No? Yes, no?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I got some earphones. Come right on. Wow. Okay. Interesting. So, if I understand right, like pictures of my house and pictures of me will be like in archives and stuff like that, or where will it be?
The photos wouldn't be in the archives,
Okay.
I don't believe. That would just be the recording.
Oh, okay.
And the photos would be on our research website.
Okay.
So if
Just
you
on the
search-
research website.
Yeah. So if you search like the BLC Field School,
Okay.
and maybe you can even make a note on there, like if you don't want those photos in a certain
No,
place.
I know you think my questions are odd, but what I did as a career for all my working years, I generally kept an extremely low profile because I worked in HR and there were people who were not happy with me. And so I've always been very protective of my address, particularly when my kids were growing up, because people made threats. So.
And if you want, like, if you don't want us to use your picture.
Oh, I don't
with
care
the
about my
audio?
picture. That's fine. You just want to know. I just didn't want all of a sudden my address and house and everything to be splashed over places I didn't know about, because there's still some people I don't particularly care to know where I live.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean.
But in your research, that's not them. The last time you find them in a research facility is like, yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And there's two separate places where you have to sign.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, so
Oh, you're
no,
fine.
don't worry about it. It's
You're
just
fine.
hard to get it at the
Is the air conditioning now too loud?
Put the headphones in and see if you can hear.
I can hear the fan.
And that's a problem? You want me to turn the fan
was
off?
Quiet. I think the sound was the air conditioning.
You want me to turn down? I can turn the air conditioning off. That's fine.
But do you think it's
I didn't
okay?
realize it was so sensitive.
It's hard to tell when. Oh, I can hear it.
The air conditioning
It's the rattle.
of the
Is that the fan?
the fan, because of the lights on it.
Okay, I can
Let me
turn that
see.
off. Do you want to use this? That might help. No, it's
the air conditioning.
the fan is okay.
Oh,
The fan doesn't make any noise.
okay.
Thank you for doing that.
like to get the little hump, but the middle one is just pretty quiet. But
That's
it generates
okay.
a breeze.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he loves the pigeon books. Don't let pigeon needs a bath. Don't let the pigeon drive the bus. Don't let the pigeon stay up too late. So now we're on the pigeon wants a hot dog because he eats hot dogs all the time. So that one I've ordered. Okay, so
And the other one's the same thing. It's just for you to keep and look back on. And then you can, there's a phone number in there somewhere you could call if you have questions.
okay. And this is why?
Yeah. Hold on, let me see. I just want to make sure this is all. There might be. Oh. I'm sorry, there's a couple more things. This. So, right here.
Do not disturb.
Crown molding.
Oh, yeah.
It's very nice.
We could certainly use a good cleaning. Printed name, okay. And signature, okay. Yeah, but I love the first house I lived in Sherman Park. It just was absolutely gorgeous.
Sherman Boulevard has some.
It's one of those big
houses.
duplexes, and I lived upstairs. Large 3-bedroom, but the kitchen was big enough to seat 20. And then the dining room I fed 30 one time, and then there was.
Oh my goodness.
But the front sunroom, I had to fill with plants and the leaded glass and inlay. It was just in the arched rooms. It was just wonderful. But it was on Sherman, which is not a good place to raise kids. So.
Can you do it a little closer, Joy?
I will.
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of wait until.
Oh, sorry. I put it all up there on the first line.
That's fine.
Oh, it does not matter. As long as it's there somewhere.
And let's see, and read the part. Okay.
And then, yeah, that's.
This is the exact same thing?
Yeah, that's the one you can keep.
Okay.
I'm just gonna move this a little closer, and then if you could just maybe tell me about your breakfast this morning, and I'll get you.
Okay. Well, it consisted of Cheerios today and blueberries. Yep, so that was my breakfast. And always a cup of tea because I'm a tea drinker, not a coffee drinker. Would you guys like water or tea or anything?
I just came from lunch. I'm
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Yeah.
I'm good. Could you say just a little bit more?
This is like making me really, really nervous. Okay.
I'm sorry.
The equipment's hard to use. It's
Who
really
else have you
sensitive.
interviewed?
Huh?
Who else have you interviewed?
We
Like
inter-
any other board members?
we interviewed Tremor Robinson,
I know.
and we're going to do Jackie Smith. They all live on the 40th and 41st.
Okay.
And this morning we did Diane Tharp. Diane Tharp.
The Canes.
The Kames. Fred and
Okay.
Mary Kames.
Okay.
You know any of them?
No.
That's okay.
Are you going to interview any other board members?
Yeah,
Yes.
Tremor Robinson is for sure on the board.
No.
No?
Hold on. I can tell you in just 1 second. We just have to pull it up. Hold on. Just have to reload it.
I'm sorry. I was
Oh,
just
no
curious.
worries. We should know these kinds of things also.
They did Tom Liffendahl.
Oh, Dr. Tom. Okay.
Christy Melby Gibbons. Shantae Hullum. And Bernadette Davil. And Beverly Edwards and Jeff.
Gabowski?
Mhm.
Oh, good. You interviewed him?
We didn't.
We
Oh.
haven't, no.
Okay.
It's
There's
another
separate-
group.
there's
He lives in
other
a
groups.
wonderful home on Sherman. So.
Pat Olin.
Yes, she owns the park. Her and her husband own the park up there.
Okay.
And they live in the neighborhood, but they own the Sherman Park.
Abby Eisenbach.
Abby lives in the Orthodox community right off of 50-something, not too far from Dr. Tom.
And Camille Mays.
And Camille is our organizer. She lives on 40 or something. Okay.
So good, we got quite a few.
Yeah, I was like, well, now I'm like, okay, so I thought you would get Selena or Barry or any of the really long time board members who live. Barry lives across Fond du Lac over there. Selena lives not too far from here, around the corner in the Norwood neighborhood, because I live in Grasslands. So, who else?
Yeah.
We
I
can
mean,
take their names.
Yeah, I think they
yeah,
should.
we can see, our professor might have already contacted them, but yeah, we can take extra names if you think there's people that would really.
I think Selena would be a wonderful one. She's been on the board a very long time, has lived
Can I
in
use this?
Norwood. Yeah, absolutely. And she's on the board, and like I said, she lives in Norwood, which is not too far from here. But I think she just has a real good sense.
What's her last name?
Oh, he would say that. I can't. I have to look in
Otherwise,
those.
we can just put Selena and.
Yeah.
Sure.
When I find my phone, I'll give it to you. Yeah.
Okay. We can figure it out.
Yeah.
This isn't too uncomfortable.
Oh,
where it's
no,
at?
no.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm just having one of those senior moments. I can't remember her name, and I should be able to remember her name,
It's
but
okay.
I can't.
Okay, so we're going to start out with a kind of script just for our documenting purposes.
Okay.
Hi, this is Bella Bewer, and I'm here at Deborah for Lewis's home at
3748
3748 55th Street. And today is July 12th, 2017, and we're doing an interview with Miss Ford Lewis at her home. Also in the room is my partner, Joy Huntington, helping with recording. And this interview is sponsored by Professor Regit Sen and his Building Landscapes Cultures Field School at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And this interview will be stored at the Golda Meir Library Archives. And now, Ms. Ford Lewis, if you could please give us verbal consent to use this audio for our research purposes?
You have my consent.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so maybe you could start by telling us some of your earliest memories of the neighborhood or this home, your first impressions.
Oh, geez. Well, we bought this home, and we were looking for a home. I had rented on Sherman Boulevard for about 3 or 4 years, and then we were looking for a home because we had inquired into buying the home we were in, but structurally, we were concerned about long term. So driving down the street, I was looking for a very large duplex because I knew when we purchased a home, eventually my parents would come to live with us. And so driving down the street one day, because in Sherman Park, there are as many homes that used to be up for sale by owners there are for sale by brokers or whatever. Saw this house, and I liked it because it was big, and there was just something about the shape of it I liked. So I knocked on the door, and a little lady answered the door, and it was just her and her husband. And she and I sat down, and we went through the house, and it's a large 3 bedrooms, and it had a yard and a garage, and the street was one of those where the trees formed they met each other in the middle of the street. So when you look down, you just saw this gorgeous tree-lined street that had this green ceiling to it. But at that time there were still young families and original owners on the block. So the people we bought it from were original, and they were probably the second home on the block. She said when she moved here, there was farmland across the street. And then the 3 ladies across the street were the original owners of their home. So she and I sat down and negotiated the deal for this house. We sort of put our husbands in a separate room, and she and I knocked it out. So that was it. I liked the feel of the street because it looked like it had young families and seniors, and it was quiet, and I figured I wanted to be on a block where I could raise our kids, because we had one small child at the time, and plus that I liked seniors, and so that seeing that there were a fair number of seniors made it a balance. So that was it.
So you moved here because you wanted more safety to raise kids, you said?
I wanted a quieter block. I mean, we moved here in 1991. Sherman Park in 1991 was still, this diverse, wonderful place where you could walk around and take walks and say hi to your neighbors. And, at the time I started living here, Sherman Park still was a hub. We had national bike races. There were Sherman Fests. Neighbors were neighbors. It was just a cool neighborhood. My concern was, number one, where I lived on Sherman Boulevard. Beautiful old homes, but very small backyards. And it was a busy street. And because we had small kids, my son was small, we wanted a quieter block with a bigger yard where I would feel, more comfortable with the kids playing up front. And this really did end up being that way. It was a neighborhood where there were a fair number of young families and it was the kind of neighborhood where kids roamed up and down the block, and you would start looking for your kids in somebody's yard because they always fed them and then sent them home at dinner. But it was like, is my kid back there in your backyard? Yeah, he's back there. I'll give him lunch and you'll send him. Or when they were playing out front, there was always a parent out there sitting, watching all of your kids so the parents could do what they had to do. Like I said, I love the diversity of it, just because that was something I had grown used to as an adult. We moved here because I wanted a quieter neighborhood, that it was more likely we'd get a sense of neighborhood and get to know our neighbors. I also was looking for a neighborhood school. I had grown up in a neighborhood school where I walked to school. I did not want my kids bused. I wanted my kids to walk to school. I wanted to know my kids' friends and their parents. I wanted them to live in the neighborhood so they could, have the same kind of neighborhood experience I grew up in. Not necessarily in Sherman Park, but one that every parent on the block knew all the other kids' parents on the block. So.
How old were your children when you moved?
My oldest was 2. It was just him.
How many children do you have?
2, a 28 and a 23-year-old.
Okay.
That's how old they are now.
And you have one grandchild?
A 5-year-old grandchild going on 55. So.
Okay. And also, you had mentioned that neighbors kind of used to look out more now than they do now.
Well, I think it just is indicative of how. I don't think it's necessarily unique to Sherman Park, but when we first moved here, because there were young families and a lot of seniors who walked, and you got to know your neighbors. We had block parties. We'd sit around, talk. And so because there were so many young families concentrated sort of in the middle of the block, for whatever reason, we were all like in the middle of the block. You wander across the street, you get to know them. And so kids wander back and forth. I'm sorry. Playing with each other and playing in each other's yards. So, like I said, Milwaukee now, we've lived here now 26 years. So 26 years is a lot of time. Times have changed. Families have changed, and people move around a lot more than they used to. The notion that you could move on the block and be the second owner of a home, unless you built it, is highly unusual now. So.
Okay. Do you feel that
The Fines, that's who we bought the house from. Mrs. and Mrs. Fine.
Do you feel that people don't take or don't care as much about their homes and their yards as they used to?
Oh, absolutely not. I think people care as much, if not more. I mean, it's a quality of life issue. We have a really active block watch, Grasslands Manor. It covers the area from 51st to 60th, Keefe to Capitol, and we meet twice a month, but only to accommodate everybody's schedule. So the main meeting is on a Saturday, the 4th Saturday of the month. And people show up because they're committed to staying here. They love their homes. They love the life that they have raised their kids in. Or for some of us who are now doing grandkids in the same area. I think they do care. I think what we have, our challenge is a couple of things. As people grow older and have to leave their homes, it's getting tougher for young families to come in and purchase. I think the economics in the last decade or so have not helped. I think because Milwaukee is a blue-collar town, the kinds of jobs that supported people purchasing homes and stuff here don't exist. So you get homes that are rented out, or you get duplexes that are rented. And so in a lot of cases, renters feel differently. Some don't, but some do. About the upkeep, and the landlords are not here. Usually they're not, some of them are not local, or they've moved away, or they live, northern Wisconsin, or they live in the suburbs. So, but what we try and do, and I think what my neighbors try and do on all these blocks, we try and plant the flowers, keep up the lawns and stuff. And what you will see is even the renters come out and try. They come out and they says, "Well, I'm gonna call the landlord, or I'm gonna mow the grass myself because we look terrible looking." So, I think people care if they see examples of other people caring. I think they moved here because they like the look of the neighborhood. They wanted a nice neighborhood with nice lawns and cool architect, housing and stuff. And they want the same things that those of us who have been homeowners for a long time want. They want a nice place to raise their kids and grandkids, or to just live. So I don't think they don't care. I just think sometimes they don't know how, or I think because they're renters, they're not sure how far they should invest of themselves in the property. And for those who honestly don't care, we work very hard at suggesting that perhaps this isn't the best neighborhood for them. Yeah, which is usually well-placed call. You talk to them, and quite frankly, most times if everybody else has done their lawn, they'll get out and do them. But if it doesn't work, then you do it any other neighborhood that cares about itself. Then you talk to the landlord, you do what you have to do. So, and we talk about, when we meet in our block watch meetings, we talk about the homes in this 10 whatever block radius that are problematic, and we give suggestions to other neighbors on how do you deal with neighbors who may not take the same care, approaching them. Sometimes they just don't know. We've loaned our tools. The house next to us is a rental property. It's been a rental property since we've been here. We loan our shovels, we loan our tools, we help them out, we clip, whatever, And they get out there and they work as hard as we do. So.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your landscaping or flowers in front? And do you also have flowers in back?
Yeah.
Or gardening?
That when my dad lived here, when my mom and dad lived upstairs, my dad was meticulous about the lawn. We must have had the best lawn on the block because he was retired and he was out there edging, and there were all kinds of flowers and color coordinated, and fall and winter and seasonal flowers all over. And I worked, my husband worked, and so there were lots of flowers out here. And then when he passed on, we tried to keep it up, but we weren't quite as meticulous as he is. So now that I retired, there are probably more flowers out here now than they've been in some time, just because I have a little more time and I badger everybody in the house and they're helping me with that. So you'll see flowers in the front. The hedges, the evergreens have always been there. The hostas have always been there. But, we're trying lilies and some of the other flowers. In the back, I have a couple of flower beds with roses, and now I'm doing above ground herb gardens, so you'll see my herb gardens back there and some hanging plants, and so. Do
you have the whole box and cover on the herb
No, I don't, because sometimes I have to empty the water out, so no, it's just my husband built it. It's just 4 trays of herbs. I've got cilantro and parsley and sage and peppers and thyme and stuff like that. So.
Do you use that in your food?
Oh, the thyme I use is a medicinal tea, because I'm a big medicinal tea person instead of drugs. Mm-hmm. And last year I did basil. I dry them out. I have a drying thing that I put upstairs, and I dry everything out and I crush it up, and I use fresh herbs in it. I also have down at 53rd Street, which is where my kids went. They have an area that was supposed to be green space when they originally put it in. It's now been turned into community gardens. So my grandson and I have 2 garden boxes down there where we're raising all sorts of vegetables. So.
Is that through the Sherman Park Association? Or what sponsors that garden?
I was working when the gardens first got started, so I can't tell you how they got started. I know Sherman Park was involved in it as sort of the fiscal agent. But the woman who actually takes the money for the rental, the $10 covers, the cost of more and some other stuff. And we just pay her direct. So I think it's kind of an outgrowth of the Sherman Park SPCA, because they were the fiscal agent in the beginning. But it's just the neighbors in the neighborhood. Somebody volunteers to be the person and to make sure the beds are open. And we sort of coordinate sometimes evenings where we gather and talk about and look at what have you got, and trade this and trade that. Oh, taste these. So.
To kind of backtrack a little bit, so which of your family members lives upstairs? Is there 2 units or just one?
It's 2. There's 2 units. This is a 3-bedroom dining living room, unit, and so it looks exactly like this upstairs. And originally, when we bought the house, so like I said, it was bought with the idea that eventually I knew I needed a duplex because my parents were coming from 19th and Atkinson. And when I went over there one day to visit them, and there was a bullet hole in the door, I said, "We're done. We're moving. Put the house up for sale. We're out. We're out. We're out." My mom, we had lived there 30 years. Again, very nice neighborhood when I grew up in, knew the families. But as people got older, kids like me moved away because I was gone for 7 years living in Kansas City and Madison and around before I returned to the state. But once they got here, they were living upstairs. So my kids got to grow up with their grandparents being their caretakers as we worked. So they come home to meals cooked by their grandparents. And they say they were slightly hostile when my grandparents died, and I didn't do the hot meals when they came home. It was like, why can't we have a hot meal like Papa and Nana used to do it for us? I'm like, sorry guys, I work. So they lived upstairs for almost 15 years. My mom died after about 10, and my dad after about 15. So now my sons are up there. When my oldest son moved out, and then my youngest went off to college, I knew they would kind of come back, so I put an office upstairs, and we used all the storage up there. And when relatives came to town, this is where they stayed, upstairs, because they were fully equipped bedrooms, a kitchen, everything up there. So, but my sons are up there now sharing space, and they haven't shared space together since they were in high school. So it's a journey, because the youngest one just came back in end of June. So, and the oldest one has been back a couple of years, and so it'll be interesting. And and my office is in the middle of all that chaos upstairs. So,
what do you use your office for?
I'm a lawyer by trade, but I worked for the public schools and for the city, and because what I did was labor and HR. But I like doing a little bit of, I volunteer, do some pro bono stuff. I also did a little bit of wheels, but what I really am focusing on is becoming ready to do guardian ad litem work, because I just think our kids are in need of so much, and if I can add to the system, because I have time. I'm not in a hurry. Time to hopefully study it right, get it right. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you go back and maybe tell us some about your early life, where you grew up?
My family's originally from Arkansas, so I'm part of that group that when my parents came in that migration, every year we got sent back for the summers with grandparents. So the connections to family are very strong. We have a very, very strong family connections. Pretty much grew up on where 43 is now. We lived there before that was built, and we watched that being built. So, and we were the terrible little kids who stood up over the overpasses as they threw stuff down on people as they. But I grew up on around 8th and Burleigh, and again went to neighborhood schools, and then 19th and Atkinson. But again, Milwaukee really was a good place to raise families, and people watched out for everybody, and you were accountable to everybody, and you didn't roam too far because there were always tons of kids on your block, and I went to neighborhood high schools. I went through the public school system, and so I don't know what else to tell you. I had lots of cousins and aunts and family here, so there were always family get-togethers and always trips back and forth to visit family in Ohio and Arkansas. So, and we had strong traditions of holidays, and all the family would gather at my aunt or my mom's house and do that, and my generation inherited it. So when I came back to Milwaukee after having lived in Kansas City and Madison, I picked up. So we would end up having anywhere from 30 to 40 people over for holidays. And having a duplex was wonderful because we just spread out all over. There were tables set up all over the house. I'm not sure what else you want to know about me growing up. And, I'm old enough to have lived through the housing marches and the riots. And I remember, National Guard sitting on trucks with guns in front of my house and being nice enough to us. But, I remember DSEG and all that crazy stuff. I'm a bus kid. I was one of the first ones who were bused when they started desegregation, intact busing. So you bust out there after the kids went in, and they bust you back for lunch because you couldn't stay for lunch, and then they bust you back after lunch, and then you bust back after school. So I think it has a lot to do with I think who I am and the interest in education and stuff. But it also, I think, accounts for why I so appreciate neighborhoods like Sherman Park, where having grown up like that, and having not grown up, but had enough experience in the South when it was still pretty segregated, that I really appreciate these neighborhoods. And I appreciate having my kids having a very diverse experience growing up, and people coming and going, and for them it's the norm, and it's not the norm, And I worry about kids who don't have that as the norm. So I think this is a neighborhood worth fighting for, and people say, aren't you going to move? And yeah, could we have moved? Yes. But no. My son wants to stay in the neighborhood. He wants to buy a house in the neighborhood because he says he wants his son to have sort of the same experience he had growing up. We'll see. It's a tougher fight now, and it's harder.
Could you maybe tell us some about the 1967 riots? Maybe compare those to the ones that happened last year, or your experience with that?
How do you compare different purposes?
You can say whatever you'd like.
The 67 riots, they were not as big as, L.A. and Detroit and some of the other places. But people had just gotten frustrated. Some of the issues around the police were present then and are present now. But what got destroyed in that process, again, was, places where the protesters lived. And so we suffered as a result. We had a really healthy economic area along 3rd Street and around like that. And a lot of that got destroyed. We were living on 19th, so we were like kind of not in the middle of it, and not sort of west of where a lot of it was going on. But we were close enough that, like I said, the National Guard, we were shut down. My mom, when she had to go to work, she had to show ID to get in and out. And you just, I was a little girl, so you sort of knew all this terrible stuff was going on, and there was TV, and so it was much more of a civil rights and economic civil rights, and that more of an issue, and it was so widespread. Everything shut down. Schools, the city shut down. And I think what happened last summer, I think some of the same factors are present, the unemployment, the frustration, young people, trying to figure out, why is it, 40 years later almost, we're still addressing some of the issues we were supposed to have addressed then. And you see articles about that all the time, about how all these programs were put into effect. And when you go back and look, it's like, was the change sustainable? Some things change, but we haven't found answers to the same things that sparked what happened in Sherman Park. I think one of the differences, there was, I felt like a greater sense of community in 67, and a better understanding of what was going on as opposed to what happened last summer. I think we're still struggling to figure out all the causes of it and what we can do to address it. But I'm still processing. I think my generation has to get to know the next generation. Well, maybe the next two. I'm kind of 2 levels down, you guys. You know, it's a different world. It isn't the world of Stevie Wonder and Earth, Wind, and Fire and all that, mellowness. We're a hip-hop world with a millennial generation. It's different. And, we raised them. I've got 2 upstairs. And I'm still trying to figure out what makes them tick. So, that's probably as good as the answer I can give right now. But I'm encouraged by the number of young people I meet now who have stepped up and decided to take ownership for where we go from here. And however me or anybody else can support them, I think it's time we let them lead in terms of the answers, and we're supportive. So.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How do you think the riots of 67 affected you and your outlook on your education and possibly in some ways activism?
I don't necessarily think the riots drove that. I really am probably the tail end of the baby boomers, but there was so much activism on the civil rights level, on the national level with NAM and everything else. I went to, people will tell you I'm pretty candid. I try not to be too blunt, but I'm pretty direct. We were still going to schools where we were integrating colleges, and so I think, if anything, the riots just heightened what was already going on. And members of my family were marching, in the housing marches, and we were still voting in the first of this and the first of that, and I ended up being first in different things, and so I think my activism comes from a dad who just very quietly, he didn't go out there and march, but I always have this anecdotal story. My dad was very, very faith-based, very deep in his faith as a Christian. And right was right and wrong was wrong. And so he went to get some glasses downtown that he had ordered. And they were waiting on everybody, but they weren't waiting on my dad. And he's sitting there, and he's asked about his glasses, and they keep saying, we'll get to you. And he's looking, and he's like, so finally he stands up and he says, I want my glasses. And they said, well, we'll get to you. He says, no. You're going to give me my glasses now, or no more business is being transacted at this counter. Call the police, because I need you to pay attention to me and give me my glasses. And I thought, ooh. But he got their attention and respect. He got his glasses and he left. But it wasn't yelling and screaming. He just said, no, I'm not. And I grew up around him being a very proud, direct, right is right, wrong is wrong. And so he instilled that in us as kids. And I, as I grew up, right is right and wrong is wrong. And he used to say, you stand up for it. And sometimes the consequences may not be what you want. But I always says, if I can lay my head down at night when I go to sleep, then I'm good. And so I think if I got it from any place, I got it from my parents. I got it from the time that I happened to be born in. I was fortunate that I came along when I did. Um, and I just was always taught to not be afraid. So I'm not. And so I think the riots were symptomatic, but for me, they didn't shape me because the shaping was already going on. So.
On a different note, could you maybe tell us about your favorite places in your house, or your favorite places to be, or where you spend most of your time?
My favorite place to be in this house is anytime this house is empty. And there is no one else in this house because there have always been someone else in this house as long as I've been in this house. And so my favorite place, I'll tell you my absolutely favorite place when I like this room because I love light. I love lights. I love this house because it has all these windows. Left to my own devices in the summer, every single window in this house would be open, and there's all this sunlight streaming through here, and I'm a happy camper because then I like to sit and read. I like the quietness of jazz going on. My favorite room was when I finally decided to create an office for myself upstairs, in the back bedroom upstairs. It leads out on the porch. So I get all the light. I open the door and all that fresh air is coming in and I hear the sounds of the neighborhood. I could sit up there forever. So, but I like the quietness. I love the backyard. And so, my husband tries to keep that mold and the mosquitoes down because I'll sit out there for a long time by myself. But no, I probably like this room, and I like that upstairs bedroom that leads off to the porch. Where do I spend most of my time? Probably in the kitchen. Either putzing around in there or at the table watching TV because I don't have to share that TV with anybody. So, yeah, but I like rooms that give me a lot of sunlight. So.
Do you entertain often? Like have people over?
Not really. Not very much. I was a workaholic. 40, 50, 60 hours a week. So there wasn't a lot of time for entertaining. I mean, it was like I worked a lot, then I run home, chase my kids, take them to practice, take them to games. I mean, my kids were soccer kids and swim kids and track kids and Y kids and camp kids. And so, no, I didn't have a lot of time to do that. All I had was to work, keep up with them, keep up my house. As my parents got older, they had health needs, keep up with that. So every now and then, I do a little bit more of girls' night, though, nowadays. Well, I invite a lot of my female friends up, and we'll just sit around with several bottles of wine and stuff that we like, and we have grown women's conversations, or we watch a movie that we like. And there's a room in the back with a TV that I put my husband and my kids in, shut the door, and don't come out.
So, is there a place where your husband spends most of his time? That chair.
That chair. That's his head.
That's your chair.
Well, I don't sit in it as much as I used to, but this chair has been with me since the day I graduated from college. I have hauled it to every space I ever lived in. I have rocked both my babies to sleep in it.
It's a beautiful chair.
Yeah, so it has gone every place with me. It's the one piece of furniture I can honestly say has been every place I've been. So. Yeah.
And is there a basement in this house?
Mm-hmm.
Do you use that space?
Well, you know what? We use, oh, that's the phone. Oh, what is that? The space, because the basement is divided up quite evenly also. So there's a huge washroom on that end with 2 washers and 2 dryers. So it's like having my own private laundromat. And on this side was my folks' side, and he had put shelves in and was storage, and we used that as an exercise room. There was a treadmill, a bike, and all like that. I mean, my dad would race down there to see who would be the first one to get the treadmill. On the other side, I had converted into play space for my kids. It was a big room and had all their toys down there, and we gave birthday parties down there until the flood of whatever that big flood was came and took everything. I mean, everything I had down there, the couches, the tables, everything got flooded out. So we hauled all that stuff out and put it in the alley. I thought, I'm never doing that again. It was just too much. It was too much. And then when we got flooded a second and a third time, everything went into tubs down there. So that's everything is in tubs, raised off the ground, plastic tubs. So I can't do another flooded basement. I've done 3 now.
So you don't use that space very much anymore?
Storage. That's all that's down there is storage. We don't use it. Now, I will admit, my treadmill is down there, and, it's currently being used to hang clothes on. And there's a recumbent bike and a regular bike down there, but it's basically storage now. It just, once the flooding took us there, it just wasn't the same. So, now that we've redone the lateral, so we haven't been flooded now in about 5 years, so fingers crossed.
Do you have good relationships with your neighbors around here? Like, when you're doing yard work?
Oh yeah, I taught. I go up and down the street. I mean, my husband probably can tell you more about every neighbor. He's a smoker, and you can't smoke in the house. So he's out there on the porch 365 days a year, so he knows everybody and all their habits and everything else. And so they know him. But he's not talkative. I'm the one who wanders up and down the street talking to people. So when my kids were younger, and you knew everybody on the block, as we worked and got older and they got older. So I do know my neighbors so that when they come out, we talk. And I have the one on the other side, not here, but 2 doors down. She's been here slightly a couple of years less than we raised our kids together. Now, my grandkid goes down there to play. She adopted like 4 foster kids. So I was like, you are a glutton for punishment. You raised your grandchild, Peggy Sue, and now you've got 4 foster kids that you want to start this process over again. Good luck to you. But my grandson goes down there and plays. And so she has keys to my house. I have keys to her house. We tell each other when they're gone. We help each other out. We socialize. I get along well with them, and even the renters there. And I can tell you who all the homeowners are. We all know each other who've lived here for, Karen's been here before I was. Gigi has been here a long time. I mean, I've lived here long enough that all the homeowners, there are about 12 of us who have consistently been on this block, and we all know each other and we run into each other. And then I've gotten to know a lot of the renters who have been here a long time. Some have been here a long time. But that's harder because they move in and out. We had a couple of problem houses, with some drug dealing going on, but they've moved on too, so those houses have quieted down. So you speak to people, because I walk the dog, I see people more than some other people do, and and when people are sitting out, you chat. So I think I have an okay relationship. And there are a couple who aren't speaking to me because they were renters and let their grass grow too long, and I call DNS and they know it. So we stopped talking to people. I don't care, but now they mow the grass, so we're cool. Their parents aren't mad at me. They say, good for you. And I know, and what's nice, we share the alley we share. These 2 blocks contribute for snow plowing in the winter. So I know, I think from the corner, probably 2/3 of the way down, because it tends to be a little more stable. I know all those neighbors, and we talk in the alley and stuff like that, because we all have to share the cost of snow plowing.
So you do use your alley in the back?
For?
Like most often, do you enter your home through the front or the back?
Oh, I park on the slab. I mean, up until my son moved back, the front door never got open. I mean, it just never got used, hardly at all, except if guests came, because everybody came to the back door. And then when he moved back, he started using the front door. And I think we now all use the front door. But I park in the back on the slab, so I use the back door probably more than anybody does. So.
And you use that alley to talk to neighbors, like across?
Yeah, because as I'm, I enter on the back, but sometimes when people are coming out, like, Maurice lives in the back, so the only time I see him is when he's coming in and out, we chat. When I was driving out, Jim has lived in his house, I would venture 40 years, a long time. And he was mowing his grass. But when you stop, 30 minutes later, I'm still talking to him and I need to get someplace. So, but we have, when people give parties, like when our listening remodel and they had a birthday party for her, well, those of us who know her from the back, we just kind of go to the back and go to the party. So.
And I'm not too familiar with this part of Sherman Park.
Mm-hmm.
Are there as many foreclosures here as there are?
No, not like what plagues when you go west of Sherman Park and you go probably maybe not so much south of Burleigh, but certainly south of Center. We've had foreclosures. They haven't stayed very long, and what I like about this end, when we've had foreclosures, they have not screamed, foreclosure, I'm empty. People have been nice enough to keep blinds there, the signs there, or so it's hard to tell that they're empty, or like that house on Sherman. There are a couple of houses on Grant and Sherman where they put these beautiful boarded up things that blended into the house. You couldn't even tell. So we've had foreclosures, but not very many, and they haven't screamed foreclosure. So that, But I will say, and what continues to trouble me is, as people are still quietly getting rid of their properties, they're still selling. The market is not back to where it used to be. So as a result, the value of the value of this house is not going down. It was going down now because it was a fire sale in the neighborhood as people were getting out of foreclosure, or they were, just walking away from their mortgages and the houses were being flipped. It's sort of stabilized now. Nowhere near what the home was worth when we bought, or even 10 years ago. But at least it's not dropping anymore. So that's the problem. It's people quietly selling for less, just selling because they need to get out. That's still a bit of an issue because when you look at the pricing, I'm always looking in the paper going, doggone it, they sold that house for blah 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 blah. That's not going to help. But we're not going anywhere soon, so it's a double-edged sword. I like my tax bill, but when I get ready to sell, it's a problem. But we're not going anywhere anytime soon, so it's okay for now.
Do you think you would ever move out? Or if you did, would you leave the area?
I think it depends on the neighborhood. I think at a point when I'm feeling isolated, I would think about it. I also think if my kids move away, there's a likelihood that wherever they move, eventually I would move wherever they're going. Right now I'm pretty, I don't ever want to feel like a prisoner in my house, so I don't now. Unless they say, "Mom, I say, I have no fear. This is my house, my neighborhood, and I'm claiming it." So I that's a hard question. It would depend on circumstances that I haven't seen yet. So, but I don't have a plan now to leave. Yeah.
Do you think if your sons moved out upstairs that you would ever rent that unit out to somebody else?
No. And it's interesting. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 of us on the block who own our duplexes. None of us have renters. We have family in them or nobody in them. Yeah. And so family comes and goes, like the kids move in, the kids move out. or they've converted them into large spaces, and it's, so, or else, like I said, they're intergenerational. Their mother, the two across the street, the parents live upstairs. My kids live upstairs. I live downstairs. Peggy Sue, now that she's got 4 kids, back again. She's just enlarged it down there, their family. So, yep, 2:00.
That's interesting, because that's a theme we've been seeing with people either having, their parents or their children
Kids
upstairs.
Like there, next door, 2 sisters live in that house.
Right.
So they either move together, even as renters. I see families moving together.
Do you think that's a positive
Oh,
thing?
yeah. I absolutely. I think number one, I think when families are able to live together, I think that says something about how much they care about each other, and that they are moving places where they feel safe, and that they're places they can thrive. I think when there's an investment there, an emotional investment, when you see, I think, families, moving like that and moving together. So we shall see.
Do you have any more questions, Joy, that you noted?
So we talked at the very beginning. We talked about the board, and how and why did you get involved?
I got suckered. I think I got involved because I was even more active in grasslands in our block watch, our multi-watch. So I would go as the rep to the annual meeting to report what Grassland Manor area was doing, because Sherman Park is all these neighborhoods they have. And when they had openings, somebody asked me would I like to be on the board, and again, I had retired, and I was looking for things to do, because I come home to sit down and concerned about what was happening in Sherman Park, because we were seeing a lot of renters, and I thought, well, maybe this is another way for you to get involved and have something to say about what's happening with the neighborhood. So that's kind of how I got involved. I sort of got asked, and here I am. Yeah. No, you run for election. My thing was, I care about the neighborhood, so I've been here a long time.
So you were talking just now about renters, and you were seeing a lot of increase in renters, and has the board come up with a strategy to get renters or even landlords more invested to the upkeep of the property?
I think in anything we talk about, we now just don't talk about homeowners. We talk about you really do have to start talking about getting renters involved, because they now are a significant portion of Sherman Park because of absentee landlords. And I think if renters think this is a nice place to live, they'll buy. So I think that when we talk about stuff, we do talk about a strategy for renters. Have we figured out how to, because renters also tend to be transient, it's a little harder nut to crack in terms of is the renter you talk to today going to be the renter that's going to be there a year from now? So how do you get them involved as renters? So we talk about it. We're much more sensitive to it, and I think we continue to work on something that makes sense. Or at least we think about it.
I actually have one more question. What do you think you've done with your home to make it unique to you? Have you done any renovations, or you have artwork and
Make it unique to me.
mm-hmm.
not so sure. I quite. I mean, physically, we've not done anything physically to make it, necessarily unique. Unless you count my paint jobs outside when I was doing the doors and stuff. Yeah, we have artwork around. So what makes people think of me when they walk in this house? It's comfortable. The turtles, but that's about it.
Where'd you find all those?
They come from all over the world, and that's just a fraction of them. The rest are in boxes. When I was in college, I had a turtle as a pet. The dorm had a turtle. The floor had a turtle. And we had signs, turtle on the walk, watch for the turtle when you're walking, he's out for a walk, And then when he died, I thought, no more live turtles for me. So I started collecting them, and they literally are from all continents, all over the world, different unique materials, different shapes, different meanings, like if you get fertility ones, or some of them have stories around them, some of them are antiquities, so it just depends.
Where did you go to school?
Public school here?
College.
Lawrence University in Marquette.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have one more question. Do you think the neighborhood has changed anyway with your grandson now playing here as opposed to when your kids were?
I think to the extent that all cities have changed. When he comes out front, when he plays outside now, unlike when my kids were growing up, there's always an adult within reach of him, because it's just this fear that something's going to happen, whether it's an errant car or some stranger. And so I never had to talk to my kids about stranger danger, and it's far more of a theme than I would like with my grandson. People aren't, whereas before when my kids were growing up, there was always some parents sitting out on their front porch watching the kids. There's nobody watching my grandson, so we watch him. And so I feel bad when he rides his bike. I used to let my kids ride around the block. Didn't give it a second thought. My grandson can't ride further than half a block unless I'm there. But I don't know that's anything unique to Sherman Park. I just think that's a sign of the times. Too many crazy people out there. But we walk. He wants to walk all the time. Nana, let's walk. And, people will stop and holler, and they will say, oh, I remember him. He's grown so much. Oh, I remember when he was a baby, or when he was just toddling. So there are people who notice. It's just that I don't get the same feeling of close-knit community I had when my kids were growing up.
Could that also be because so many people have grown up and maybe moved away, or?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's part of it. It's part of it. So, yeah, that would be part of it.
And do you see a sense? This is my last question.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Oh, I don't care. That's fine.
Do you sense an infusion of younger families wanting
Yes.
to come here?
Yes. We are, it's cyclical. You will have the older people kind of move on, die off, and then you'll have a bunch of renters, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see some young families. Like when Maurice and them moved in, they got babies. I mean, I saw them putting out diaper boxes and stuff like that. So there are some young families. I've watched, the little White House there, I've watched 2 families raise their kids now, 2 high school graduations and so it's like, oh, okay. So when I walk around the neighborhood, it's mixed. A couple of years ago, we saw a lot of young families, and then the crime got crazy, and we lost a lot of young families. The school thing is a tough nut to crack, because our neighborhood schools aren't the best. I'll be honest, if I were raising kids now, they wouldn't be going to the neighborhood school. But it's just, it's different.
But when I walk around, I see a lot of younger kids. Remember, I live kitty corner from the Orthodox neighborhood, so there are tons of young kids, within the Orthodox neighborhood, and so we live within their walk radius to Temple, so and 53rd Street and the playground and stuff like that. So so there are still tons of young kids in the neighborhood. Not as many on this block, but there are some, and I guess for my generation, we're now seeing the grandkids come, but not the young families are coming, but not necessarily on this block. It's just I'm not sure where they're going, but I do see them. I'm encouraged by seeing some. I'm encouraged to seeing about young single people coming back, and young couples being here.
And I told a little bit of a fib. I do have one. When you were talking, you brought something to mind. With the neighborhood schools, is there a strategy to get them to improve and become better equipped?
Oh, I think there are lots of strategies out there and lots of organizations who get that and are looking at strategies and things to make the schools better. I don't think that, would Sherman Park community association like better schools? You bet your bottom dollar. Do I think out of all the things that there are to work on, that's one that we ought to work on? Because I think the problem's bigger than us now. It's interesting, when we went on a retreat a couple of weeks ago, somebody reminded me, and I do remember this, that back in the day, candidates who wanted to run for school board had to come by SPCA to get an endorsement, or they didn't have a prayer. A much more involved organization at that time. But I like I said, I think now, would we like to see improved schools? Are we equipped to do anything about that? No. We join in we support all the efforts, and we, applaud all the efforts, but I don't think that's our strong suit. I think we got to worry about preserving the housing and the diversity and the culture of Sherman Park now, so it continues to be a place people want to come to.
I'm sure I'm done.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Anything else?
Do you have anything else that you'd like to add that we did not cover?
No. Not that I can think of. I think I talked enough. Get me started, and it just keeps coming. It's like the Energizer Bunny. Oh yeah, I remember that. That kind of stuff.
Grab another little script. In conclusion, this has been Bella Bewer with the 2017 BLC Field School. And this has been an interview with Miss Deborah Ford Lewis. And also, recording is Joy Huntington. And this interview will be archived at the Golden Mirror Library Archives at UWM. And thank you again.
All right.
Great
Is it
job.
off? Oh, I hope I didn't talk too much.
Wow. That's perfect. You just press